I've heard the title of the book, I haven't read it yet.
Your research has proved that many of all three factors that finance many projects in
If you look in my book, Churchill's War, you'll find I quote a document, a rather unusual document. The question is, did Wall Street bankers finance Hitler? I know what you mean, what you're getting at. The German Chancellor Brüning, before Hitler, Hitler's predecessor, he wrote memoirs. When he fled from Germany in 1938, he came to the United States eventually, and his papers are in Syracuse University in New York, where I've seen them. He wrote a letter to Churchill in 1937, after he had already gone into exile. And in this letter to Winston Churchill, Brüning, the German Chancellor, said, if you knew the problems I had as Chancellor, said, I discovered that the major Jewish banks in Berlin had been financing Hitler, and that one of the banks was controlled by the head of the Jewish community. I have a copy of this letter. Now, after World War II, Winston Churchill wrote to Brüning, the Chancellor, who was by then living in the United States, and asked Brüning's permission to quote that letter in his 6-volume history of the Second World War. Brüning wrote a reply to Churchill saying, Mr. Prime Minister, I'm very sorry to have to refuse your permission to quote that letter. It was true what I wrote at the time in 1937, but given what has happened to the Jewish community in the years since then at the hands of the Nazis whom they financed, it would be too tragic for this fact ever to become known. And so Churchill wasn't permitted to quote the letter. And I have all these letters because they're in the files of the Time Life organization, which published the American edition of the Churchill memoirs at Columbia University, in the archives of the then editor of Life magazine, Daniel Longwell. And like going through his private papers, I found copies of these Churchill-Brüning letters, which are very interesting indeed, of course. Needless to say, that didn't stop me from quoting them in my book, Hitler's War.